Hi, I'm Mimi Chan. Welcome to Culture Chat. Thanks for joining the conversation. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to bring you this conversation with Gina Prince-Bythewood, who is the award-winning director of wonderful films like The Old Guard, Love and Basketball, and Beyond the Lights. Gina shares insights on her career and why she advocates for seeing more diversity and women in the filmmaking process. We also chat about her journey as an athlete, Mixtapes, and her favorite shows to binge watch. Gina is currently working on a historical epic film called The Woman King, starring Viola Davis. Gina's latest film, The Old Guard, written by Greg Rucka, starring Charlize Theron and an all-star cast, is available streaming now on Netflix. I'm enjoying these conversations and hope you are too. If you are, please help me by rating this podcast and sharing it with others. If you'd like to help keep this podcast going by being a patron of the show, you can do so on my website or on patreon.com. For comments or suggestions, email me at mimi@culturechatpodcast.com or reach out on social media at SifuMimiChan. Now, on with the show. Hello, Gina. Thank you so much for joining me on Culture Chat today.
Good to be here.
Oh my goodness. Well, before we jump in, it's an incredible honor to have you here. Huge fan. And I want to give a shout out and thank you to our mutual friend, Greg Rucka, for connecting us.
Greg.
Yes. And I'm sure you hear this all the time, especially over the past month during the many interviews that you have conducted, but I'm a huge fan of your work. You had me at Love and Basketball.
Thank you very much. It's amazing that The Old Guard is coming in the same year as this 20th anniversary of Love and Basketball. So it's been really nice to kind of look back on that and see how far I've come, but also how that film influenced The Old Guard.
Yeah. And, one of the things I've noticed, because like I said, I've watched a lot of your films, is that it's so character driven. And what's interesting about a lot of the characters in your films is from the outside looking in, the grass is always greener. Like, who wouldn't want to be immortal or worshipped as a rock star, a basketball star? And things aren't always as they seem. And I think a lot of people see directors for Hollywood films in that, and actors even in that same light. Having a small bit of experience in that industry, it's kind of glamorized, and there's a lot of misconceptions and bigger challenges that you face, even being a successful director of something like The Old Guard and coming off that praise. What is kind of your comment to that, where people always kind of presume that it's so easy, especially once you've done the first hit like Love and Basketball?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I said this very thing to a fellow director yesterday. This industry is not for the faint of heart. Now, it is incredibly tough. Yet, I stay in here and fight because it's what I absolutely love to do. And I feel blessed and lucky every time I get to make a film or a TV show, because it's truly what I love. And the reach that we have to tell our stories, to put our stories into the world, to put messages out into the world. It's pretty incredible when you think millions of people are hearing what you have to say. And I know the power of film, and that it could absolutely change perception and change culture. So, I'm in it. I'm in for the fight. But, it's tough.
Yeah, absolutely. How early in life did you know you wanted to be a filmmaker?
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I went into UCLA thinking I was going to write soap operas. And I had that dream. I believe I was 17. I have an obsessive personality, and I was obsessed with soap operas. I was watching 5 a day.
Wow.
And and I read an article in Soap Opera Digest, because I was reading as well, about soap opera writers. And that was the first time it clicked in that, someone gets paid to do that, And so decided on UCLA Film School and got there. And you can't get into the film school until your junior year. You have to apply your junior year. So those first 2 years, I just hung out and worked on student films and took any class I could where you didn't have to be within the major. And I remember it distinctly, being on a student film set. I was working in the crew. I was carrying a light stand over my shoulder. And suddenly, like that, I said in my head, I'm a director. And I realize now that, because I never knew where it came from, but I realize now that it was because in being on a set, I was starting to understand how it all was put together, how it all worked. And it was like, that person there's in charge of all of it, you know? And so it's that simple thing of sometimes you need to see it to know that you can be it. And that's what happened to me.
Yeah. And so did 17-year-old Gina write any soap opera storylines? Did you have like projects that you were working on? Like what's kind of your earliest home video style, because as an indie filmmaker, you have these little projects that you can, toy around with. What's some of the earlier things you've done that's not credited perhaps?
Well, honestly, my parents reminded me by sending me a short story I wrote when I was about 8 or 9. Yeah. I actually have it framed in my office. And so it reminded me, they sent it to me a couple years ago because they save everything. And thank God. And I realized, wow, I was a storyteller way back then. I just didn't know. And, the story, it's only a paragraph, but it had a twist at the end. And, I'm very impressed by myself when I saw that. So did write short stories all the time. In high school, I took a television class and we had to write a script and, it was awful, but I was writing and it was, I was starting to pull from my personal life to tell the story, which is absolutely something I do now. So that kind of started early as well of mining your own life for stories or character. So I think that, I still have, as I said, I still have that short story. So I will credit that as the first thing.
I love it. I'd love to read that too. But I always find it amazing when there's the written and directed by Gina, Prince-Bythewood, and it's such an impressive thing because each role is such an integral role to part of the storytelling process. But with a little knowledge that I do have of the industry, I've often heard as well, in order to kind of get your film made, you want to direct it, then you need to be like, well, I wrote this and this is, I'm attached to this. Was it kind of like that because there's quite a few projects that you've written and directed? Did you feel that you needed to also write it in order to direct it? Was it kind of one of those, or you just kind of went with it?
For Love and Basketball, 100%. When I graduated film school, I had the very wrong assumption that scripts are just going to get thrown at me to direct. And I realized very quickly that was not the case. And, I got really good meetings based on my thesis film. And every meeting I had with these people at the studio was, what do you want to do? What script do you have written? And I didn't have anything. So that was a big eye opener, and realized then at that point that I would have to write something and attach myself as a director. And that's certainly a lesson now. Anytime I talk to film students, one of the first things I let them know is you've got to come out with something concrete and in hand so you don't waste all those opportunities that I wasted.
Yeah. And speaking of UCLA film program, I know that you also fund a scholarship for African-American students, and you're a huge advocate for equal representation in film, which is absolutely amazing. And of course, lately with the success of The Old Guard, congratulations, of course, by the way, you're praised with, first Black female director to be on the top 10 most popular Netflix, and also to direct a comic book film. And it's this evolution that I watch as a female person of color as well. Like, it's such a happy yet sad moment because it's amazing, but it's just taken so long. It's 2020. So it's like we've come so far, but it's not nearly enough, right?
Yeah. Now, the fact that in 2020 we're still having firsts, and, in this industry, it's one of the most maddening things, how few women get this opportunity, how few Black women, how few people of color get this opportunity to tell stories that are then given to the world. And it absolutely affects the way the world perceives us. And it's so obvious that there should be no gender attached to whether you could direct or not. There's nothing male about directing, and it's yet you look at the numbers, and anytime you feel like there's a sea change, and I will say this year, did feel like a sea change because there were supposed to be 6 blockbuster films opening this year, directed by women, and half of us were women of color. Never happened ever in the history of Hollywood. And for all of us to have success, which is my hope. And I still, obviously we just heard that Mulan is going to, now come out on streaming, which I'm happy in that I get to see it. And as a filmmaker, Nikki gets to share her work with the world. There is a disappointment in the same way that I had a disappointment. Old Guard was supposed to have both theatrical and Netflix. Mulan was supposed to, be
absolutely
a big global launch. So there's incredible empathy for all those filmmakers who you put so much of your life into one of these, and you just want it out, and the uncertainty is really tough. But I'm absolutely rooting for the success of all of us, so that this door that Patty Jenkins opened a crack, and now this group of us has pushed it open even wider, that it stays open for kind of a deluge of us, because we're out there. We want to do all types of films, and we have got to rectify this incredible imbalance of who gets to tell our stories.
Yeah, I have noticed the shift, and I've been fortunate to have conversations with other filmmakers and been on other podcasts talking about that sense of you. And it's been nice and refreshing to also see, even in the TV world, like you're seeing, Mindy Kaling's doing great work and constantly hiring female teams, and just the diversity. And even I think Reese Witherspoon's recent Little Fires Everywhere, like you look at the credits, and I notice, because I sit there and watch credits, right? Because I appreciate that. Not many people do, but you actually are seeing a little bit more of that balance. But like you said, so far to go, and it's a frustration. One of the things that I adore about following, I'm not a huge social media advocate, but I love following the people that I respect, such as you and Greg, and we talk all the time. It's one of the things I've noticed lately, especially on your social media. It's that empowerment of other women and celebration of other women. As someone who's worked in the stunt industry, I love the fact that you're posting stunt performers from, the old guard, because I feel like it, and the editing team and the visual effects team, it's these roles that don't get celebrated, because obviously we always see the actors, and many of them are advocates as well, which we love. But I think it's just amazing how you're such a voice for a lot of others that, maybe wouldn't get to have kind of that moment. So I think it's just been really gracious and refreshing to see. And I wonder, is it maybe because you have that point of view where you were either overlooked or not appreciated for your work because you were female or black female, is it that empathy?
I mean, probably that certainly I think has something to do with it, given what we bring to our job is all of our experiences. I hope also that it's just the type of person I am, but we don't make these films in a vacuum. There's an incredible group of people behind me that have believed and trusted my vision, and then put in so much work to help me realize my vision. So, and as you said, so many are unsung. I love the fact that my editor, Terry Shropshire, is getting much deserved shine, because she's such an incredible part of my process. I love that. I want them to have more, even, Julia, who was Charlize's stunt double, and Bethany, who was Kiki's, absolutely. Our 2 actors put in incredible time and work to be able to do most of their stunts. But there were 2 people that had a big hand in it, and they've kind of been overlooked. And, I'm grateful to everybody for, just helping me realize my vision.
Yeah, I always, literally, my husband heard me just like yell and cheer. He's like, "What's going on?" Because I'm looking at my phone, and I'm like, "Well, it's just refreshing because, not to take away anything from the actors and the work they put in, because I get it. I'm a lifelong martial artist. I know that you can't make something look authentic without putting the work in. But at the same time, it's not just public recognition, but it's the gratitude. It's just kind of that you're part of the project, you're part of something. And I think that was just something truly very touching to me. So I just wanted to point that out and kind of give you kudos for that. But it's particularly been a rough year, like you said, because of COVID-19. The whole film industry is insane. I'm sure. I mean, something Greg and I have talked about a lot is what is that film process even going to look like going forward? You know, that trust, like you see the sports teams have started to come back and then they shut down because half the team have been infected. And so it's kind of this precarious position. I know you have another project coming up. What kind of pressure does that put on you for like what's coming on the horizon or put on production to if and when things are going to kind of get started? I know a lot of things have, but like my friend told me, she loves watching her Spanish soap operas, and she goes, but now they're like barely holding hands, and you know it was all about the love and the kissing, and now they're like kind of holding hands from a distance. It's kind of funny to watch, but yeah, what kind of does this kind of throw a wrench in that wheel for you guys?
Oh, it's really horrifying, given there's so much uncertainty. And you know, I know of only a couple things that have come back. And I mean, literally a couple. I know everybody has such an eagerness, of course, to get back. And it's not only us as directors, you know, producers who want to, you know, have the chance to tell our stories again. There's so much crew, so many vendors that are just being decimated by this. And I mean, it affects so much because so much is involved in filmmaking, and it's so collaborative. It's such an intimate process that, I mean, I don't want to come back yet until we can, you know, do a love scene properly or do a fight scene properly, or like just the director relationship I have with every department. It's intimate. It's face-to-face conversations and collaboration, and me and the actors, it's so, you know, again, it's so intimate, and there's so much uncertainty. Every time we think maybe there's a little light, and then we get smacked back to reality. And especially in Los Angeles, we were doing so well.
Yeah.
And then we came back too early because of pressure from, you know,
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm in Florida, so I was telling earlier, apologies on behalf of Florida. This is like something I have to do every podcast, but yeah, it's true. I mean, we have no leadership here. So, I mean, our county fights the state leadership. So I get it. You get that pressure, and I get it. We want people to be employed.
Yes.
But safely.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's if we had just stayed closed for a little bit longer, I feel like we would not be in this mess. And now it literally feels like no end in sight because there is absolutely no national leadership. It's getting worse. And now I just saw a report today with New York where they're saying these new cases that are popping up have been traced to people coming from out of state into state. So how do you control that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's devastating. And my hope is that you're just going to take all of that energy and channel it into writing another story, one of your stories, because what do you do, right? Like I've heard, oh, well, animation is going to have a rise or all these different facets. So my hope is all the writers out there just creating all this amazing content. So when it's time for go, we're just going to be inundated with all these projects.
But you know, that's the other thing. It's like as a writer, and I've talked to other writers about this, should our work reflect what is happening or what did happen with the belief that we're going to come out of it? Do we just write as if it never happened? You know, that's certainly in the ether as well.
Yeah. It was something Greg and I talk about a lot of different things on the show. And he's like, well, you know, you watch TV now, you're like, hey, they're not socially distanced. So when the next story that comes out, will there be a project that it's obvious everyone's social distance? Do they have the masks? And it's a really interesting time in terms of how jarring that's been. You're certainly a creative and a storyteller. Does that allow you to then fuel things? Like, does it add fuel to the fire, or does it make things more difficult, like having the writer's block and having difficulty restoring lost focus?
No, I feel like I'm actually eager to write. I was very fortunate, and I use the word fortunate. It's a weird word to use during this time, but when it kind of first hit, I had to focus on finishing The Old Guard because our release date wasn't going to move, because it was on Netflix. So that's all I had something to do every day, and something creative to do every day. Now, but I was also very eager to get my break because it's been 2 years on the old guard. And, so I just want to take this time to binge watch and watch great shows and catch up on all these things that I missed and be inspired, because I get inspired. I love getting professional jealousy, or I watch something like, Minnie Kaling's Never Have I Ever. I loved that show so much. I devoured it. Little Fires Everywhere. Loved it, devoured it. I'm watching I May Destroy You right now, which is just so next level. So watching stuff like this absolutely gets me hyped to get back in that chair and start to write.
Yeah. Did you catch the Mindy's Four Weddings and a Funeral? Because there was a huge nod to Love and Basketball in there. I again stood up and cheered. How fun is that? Must that be to like kind of be watching something and maybe not expect it? Was that like, is it always like this sweet surprise?
Well, they had actually tweeted it out before it came out. So that was already like, wait, what? It's always when people that you respect, dig your work. It's exciting and it's fun. And, I'm certainly one to share my love of things that I've seen as well. And, it's really fun to be connected in that way.
Yeah. I loved that. Speaking of all of the challenges with COVID and everything, there's just another layer to it. And it's something that, again, I'm very passionate about, that I've spoken about for a long time, but it's been such an extremely tense year when it comes to the subject of racism and equality. And if you don't mind discussing what, kind of went through your mind. I know you were very busy with work, which can be a good thing because it directs your energy with, I have a deadline, this is going to get met. But of course, after the George Floyd murder, it was just such a jarring time. And on, again, one hand, unbelievably frustrating. But on the other, I started to see, well, more people are caring, more people are at these Black Lives Matter protests that weren't there before or hadn't spoken out before. So what was kind of that experience for you, or what was going through your mind?
This national reckoning that is happening is, it's so long overdue. It's amazing how often we thought, oh, this time finally people will hear. And I mean hear, like take it in what we've been screaming about for decades. And this time does feel different. It absolutely has to be tied to the pandemic in some way. And I still haven't been able to articulate it, though others have. But, foremost, what was most emotional for me, and I know for a lot of Black folks, is that we understand that there are 1,000 George Floyds that were just not on camera. And you think about all those families, all those brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers who know the truth, know that their loved one was murdered, and you get no justice. And I know I have 2 boys. I don't know how you get up in the morning, and in talking to some of these mothers, the absolute guttural heartbreak and rage that they have to carry every single day is it's tough. And so that it absolutely fuels you. This is so strange because this is a hopeful time, given that people are finally hearing us. They're not being defensive. They're actually finally understanding what systematic racism is. Finally understanding what Black Lives Matter means. And not, at least in my bubble, not being defensive now when they are called on things. And, openly, please help me. And oftentimes they're embarrassed. I'm embarrassed to ask this. I tell them, don't be embarrassed. I'm glad that you are open and wanting to change. It's also a very dangerous time where you see that little group, but very loud group that is pushing and fighting against change. And the fact that people feel emboldened to pull a gun out in a parking lot on a Black mother and her daughter, on camera, or that couple who are bringing out, automatic machine gun because a protest is passing their house, and in their minds that is okay. And despite still the obvious need for complete reform in police departments, you're still catching police on camera brutalizing Black and brown people. And you look at the video that just came out yesterday of the family handcuffed because of mistaken identity. They thought they stole the car. You handcuffed a 6-year-old? Like, I can't get over that. I can't get over it. So there's so long to go, but I have to remain hopeful because this change has to happen. It has to happen. And so it does influence the way you think about your work. And, one of the biggest issues is the complicity of Hollywood and the images that Hollywood has put out, which is absolutely weaponized Blackness, yet also it's the invisibility in not having true stories of people of color coming from our authentic voice and our truth. And so the lack of humanity that is shown us in the world is absolutely reflected in what Hollywood has put out and not put out. And so my fight, if you look at my body of work, has absolutely been putting Black women on screen. My husband's work, absolutely, it's putting Black folks on screen so that people can see the breadth of our humanity. We need 1,000 more films and television shows like that to right this wrong that's been going on for decades.
Yeah. And speaking of your husband, I feel fortunate because my husband and we work well together. We collaborate on so many things professionally as well as, and I noticed that, your husband's worked on official projects with you in the past. And I wonder how important that is for you to have that kind of support system and someone who really understands what it's like to come home from a set or have, writing a project and having frustration. And do you also bounce ideas off of him on projects that he's not necessarily working on? Like, what is that support system like for you?
I mean, it's all of that. It's, it starts with, as you said, it's what we do is incredibly difficult to have somebody who is going through the same thing you go through, both the really high highs and the low lows, is great. Because if you didn't, so interesting, if you step out of it, you say it's a movie, but when you're in it and you're fighting for your vision and you've got all this pressure, like it feels like everything, it feels so big. And so again, it's great that we understand each other and what we're going through and the fights that we have to have and the importance of what we're putting into the world. We are our first eyes and ears. We're the first audience for each other, and we are the hardest on each other because we know, like, you have to be, because you have one chance to make a first impression when you put your work out there, and it's got to be good. And, starting with Love and Basketball and the incredible work that Reg gave me on that script. I was so many, late nights sitting at a dining room table. And that was when we were dating, and just, throwing stuff out and trying different things. And what if we take the story this way or that way? And, then I do the same for his work. And so, it's a gift to be that close to someone who I consider the best writer. Hopefully he considers me.
He better.
But it's great to have that collaboration. He makes me better, and I think I do the same. Absolutely.
And did you guys meet on a TV show on the Different World, or was it before that?
No, we actually saw each other first at a taping of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Okay.
And we were hired a week apart on A Different World, and that's where we clicked and became best friends.
I love it. That's so cool. And as a martial artist, I want to hear a little bit more about your athletic background, because I know you did track growing up, and obviously basketball is like dear to your heart. And I recently heard you're into kickboxing. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about your draw to that.
Yeah. I mean, sports is everything. Absolutely defined me. My parents put us in sports, me and my siblings, since we were 5 years old. Started with soccer. Back then, there weren't any girls' leagues, so we had to play with boys, and they hated having us out there and literally would punch and kick us. But my parents told us, stay out there, keep fighting, prove yourself. And that's an incredible lesson. And I was better than most out there. And I just stayed with it and gravitated towards basketball and track. Those were my two main sports. But I also lettered in high school: tennis, volleyball, cross country, softball. So, and then also was on a swim team when I was younger.
Wow.
So it's
like an all-round athlete. It's no joke.
But in terms of elite level, it was basketball and track, and everything the sports teaches girls is so incredibly important. All the things that most parents tell their daughters to tamp down, when you're in sports, that's what's encouraged, the outworking everybody and being loud and being ambitious and aggressive and believing that you're the best and leaving it all out on the floor. Those lessons I absolutely brought to being a director. You need all of that, when you're directing a film and navigating yourself through this industry. Once I got to UCLA, I knew I wanted to go to UCLA Film School. I was recruited to play ball at a couple other colleges, but not UCLA. And it was at that point I had to make that really hard decision. And it was very hard because my entire life was athletics. And but I knew also, I feel I'm very fortunate that I had that certainty of what I wanted to do, at 17, 18. So went to UCLA. But that freshman year of not having athletics was like I was in a depression. It was such a huge part of me missing. So sophomore year, I joined track team and did triple jump, and it was great. I loved it. Being a student athlete, it's an amazing thing, and competing on that level is just really amazing. But then I got into film school my junior year, and at that point I knew I did have to. There was no time if I was going to give my all to film. But even after graduation, I still played ball in all these different women's leagues, and all the way up until I had my kids. And at that point, it was too hard. You have 2 C-sections, and it's like your mind is still there, like what you could do on the court, but your body is not following it.
And that's the frustrating part, right? You're like, no, I usually make that shot. This exactly. Is the basic. What?
But I took that. I started martial arts, I feel like in my early 20s. It was something I'd always wanted to do as a kid, but that was the one thing my parents didn't put us in. And
you sounded pretty busy. You only have so many evening practices and weekend, games to make. I mean, it sounded pretty consuming.
Yes, I started martial arts, and I believe it was Taekwondo that I started with, but it was a lot of, learning the katas and things like that. And I wanted to, just have more physicality. And so I started kickboxing and joined the Jet Center, and Benny the Jet and his sister. Oh my God. I love her. She was tough.
Yeah.
And then his wife, Sarah. And it was such a great environment because it was, this is not, cardio kickboxing. It was hardcore. And so, you had to train there for, I think their rule was, it was 3 months, either 3 months or 6 months before you were even allowed into the ring, which was very smart.
Of course.
And they had a thing where they didn't want women to train against each other because because they felt women, they go too hard at each other, which is kind of fascinating. So we always trained against men, which is also a kind of a strange thing because there is just that built-in bit of intimidation. Yet when you're in the ring, against the guy and you can take a punch and keep coming back, then that also gives you some swagger. But,
you come back with all the bruises and you get to do the recovery.
I looked like so I was getting battered because I had bruises everywhere, but it was great. But then it got to the point where they wanted me to start fighting. And I had to really look into myself. I mean, one, of course, I was also working on becoming a filmmaker.
Right.
But I had to finally realize, you know what? I don't think I have that final thing. I was super athletic. I was super fast. My technique was great. I didn't like it in the ring, though. It's like you have a knot the whole time, and some people can feed off that knot. And I'm glad I did it, certainly, and went rounds with different folks. But like my husband was a boxer when he was growing up, and really good. And he really wanted to fight, and he was supposed to go into Golden Gloves, and his mother stopped him because she was afraid he was going to get hurt. And he has that thing, where I had to be honest with myself. Do I want to bludgeon somebody? That I'm not angry at, No. Do I want to get bludgeoned myself? I mean, obviously you hope that would never happen to you and that you would always have, good enough offense and defense for that not to happen. But it is, you have to have that mentality.
Absolutely. The fighter mentality.
Yeah, it's the thing. So I certainly have it in this industry and in my life, but it's another level that you need to go to. So at that point, I had to tell them, no, I wasn't going to.
Well, you have a fighter mentality, but it doesn't mean it has to be physical, right? I think that's what's important is you're able to kind of channel that. But as you know, it's like the martial arts just teaches you so much about yourself and how you can apply that, just like all the sports and everything that you mentioned. And for the listeners that don't know, Benny the Jet's no joke. So make sure you look that up. And there's some really great films, old school films out there with him in it. And I always liked seeing those little nods that like John Cusack would always throw out or have him in his films and stuff. Yeah. Always a lot of like Grosse Pointe Blank. It was always a lot of fun to see. But yeah, much respect if that's where you were training. That's really, really cool to hear about. So in terms of, and this is the martial artist in me, of course, asking, like I kind of have like my routine, whether it was before I competed or before like the first time I walked on set or something. Like I have my breathing routine, I have my warm-up routine. What's kind of your, like, do you have kind of regimen or routine before like that first day out on a big project or film or game day rather?
It's actually not about the first day. It is anytime I've taken a film. Prior to that, I've done some sort of like physical training. And it's because filmmaking is so hard. You have to build up your stamina. You can never get sick. Yeah. You can never be tired. So I've always done something to build it up, and it usually starts a couple weeks before. So, before Beyond the Lights, I did P90X, which is really a mental challenge because you're seeing the same guy doing the same joke, saying the same thing for 90 days. But I was in incredible shape. It does work. Prior to the old guard, I was doing cycling. It was Soul Cycle. And then once we got to Europe and to London, what was it called? It was called Cycle, but kind of spelled like psycho, but cycle. And my DP, Tammy Riker, and I did that together. And it's really a thing. And then prior to Secret Life of Beads, it was running on the treadmill, so it's all about building up my mental toughness and building up my stamina and building up my physical so that I could, really take on the months and months that it takes to make a film.
Yeah. And what's your decompress mode thing, or what do you do to just kind of let it all go? Or when the film's wrapped, like, do you have kind of a go-to for the joys?
That's the thing. Normally I do go on some sort of vacation. This one, given I've been on it for 2 years, I never got that. The blessing is to get to be home with my boys and my husband, and but you do need to let it go. And I remember it was, and this is prior to COVID, right before I was supposed to start the editing, which is, and the day before I was going to watch my, the editor's cut. That's the scariest thing, because you are now you're seeing the film for the first time, and it's never going to be what was in your head. And it is always going to be a disappointment. And that is no knock whatsoever. And Terry and I laugh about this all the time. She hates this part of it because I'm always curled up in a ball at the end of it. And it's not a reflection of her work. It's a reflection of my work and all my failings. And I see everything I didn't get. But also you're looking at it for the first time, and like, it is, did you fuck up? That's literally what it is. And so hard. So, and this one was on such another level. And I remember trying to find somebody to go to the beach with me. I just craved the beach. And I'm not a huge beach person. I like it, but sunbathing, I get bored, and swimming in the ocean. I grew up boogie boarding, but the ocean has become a fearful thing for me. Just, the fear of drowning. And
there's sharks in the ocean. That's my fear. I'm like, they don't want us there.
Jellyfish. But I couldn't find anybody to go with me because people are working, and I'm trying to go to the beach in the middle of the day. And so I went by myself, which is also something I don't like being by myself. But it was perfect. I literally sat for hours in my chair, staring at the water and just listening and watching the waves come in. And it was so amazing and so calming. And it's exactly what I needed to try and let go of so much of the stuff that happened on set, so that I could go in the next day and watch the film fresh. And now I crave to be back there on that beach. I want that.
Yeah. Well, hopefully all of this stuff will wrap up and we can all go on our little hopeful vacations. As soon as we are given the green light, is there a certain place you're going to fly to, go to? Is there like a vacation spot that's one of your favorite countries? Or?
I mean, now not at this point, because the boys are about to be back in school. I'd say back in school, both of them are going to be online, at least for the first. My son is at NYU. It was his first year, so we had to come back. But his first semester, he'll be here online. And then my younger son's in high school. He'll be online. My window.
Your window is closed.
So it may just be sitting in this office here and just curled up watching nonstop television.
That's not so bad, I guess. We have a few listener questions, if you don't mind taking them. And we'll, I know you have a limited time, so I appreciate you spending so much time with me. But this one comes from Nick, and he wants to know how your filmmaking style has evolved over your career from Love and Basketball to The Old Guard.
Wow. I feel like I've really come into an aesthetic that I love, which is, I use the term intimately epic, which is that so much of storytelling is about the intimate moments, the details, looks between characters when they're not talking, what their hands are doing, the body language, what their environment is, what picture is nearby, and how important that is to tell the story. And when you tell these intimate stories, that then they have a bigger message and meaning, and that's where you get the epicness. And I do that through handheld. I really love just a breathing handheld. It gives, for me, it just feels like it gives it an urgency and a realness, which is so strange because in real life, like I'm looking at you and you're not moving. Yet when you have that, it does give it an immediacy. So. And just a natural vibe, a grounded and real vibe. I want people who watch my work from Love and Basketball all the way to The Old Guard, and The Old Guard, given its fantastical conceit, I still want you to watch it and feel like this is real life and these are real characters and they could be next to you at a Starbucks. Because I feel like when you can connect to characters at that level, that's when you keep coming back and wanting to watch something over and over because they feel so real. So certainly my visual style has evolved to that from Love and Basketball. And you just learn so much with every film that you do. You grow as a filmmaker, you get more settled in your aesthetic, and and what you love. And I feel like I've really, really figured it out at this point.
Okay. And this one is from Tiffany, who might be your number one Love and Basketball fan. She's probably willing to like fight someone off for that title. She's like, when is Love and Basketball 2 coming out? But that's not the question. This is how much she loves it. But she was actually curious about the song selection for the different scenes. Like, what was that process like? And if there were songs that didn't make the cut that you wish you could have squeezed in there, because the soundtrack obviously is amazing.
Yeah, I love putting together the soundtrack. I love it. And it saddens me that soundtracks have really gone by the wayside, because for me, those great soundtracks allow you to listen back to the music and see the movie again in your head, because the songs were so tied. I mean, I think about Purple Rain. Like, I wore out that soundtrack. and it was like you get to sit and you listen and see the movie again. Love Jones. Great soundtrack. So in Love and Basketball, I love songs for score. And that is, songs that where you might traditionally put traditional score. It's just songs can evoke such emotion. It's what songs absolutely do for me. They can literally change your mood. They can make you feel, they can make you cry, they can make you pumped up. And so to be able to add that to a scene and finding that perfect song, which does that, but doesn't take it over, doesn't do the work for you. It's so exciting. And to find that perfect song that does it. And I'm very fortunate because Terry, my editor, loves music the same way I do. So, my two favorite, I love all the needle drops in Love and Basketball, but my two favorite are Maxwell's This Woman's Work and Michelle Indegocello, Fool of Me at the end, because we almost didn't get either of those. This Woman's Work, I had heard Maxwell on Unplugged singing that live. I was like, I've got to put that in a movie. I didn't have Love and Basketball yet. I had loved the Kate Bush version, but that it just wrecked me listening to him. And so we put it in the film. And we had tried so many songs, so much score in that spot of Quincy and Monica's first time. Yeah. And nothing was working. So we put it in. But Maxwell said we could use the song, but we weren't able to put it on the soundtrack. So there was no reason for New Line to pony up $200K for it. Right. But it was in for our Sundance screening, which was 1,300 people, at Eccles up at Sundance. And after that, they were like, okay, which was amazing. I'm so grateful to Mike and Luca for giving me that. And Fool of Me at the end during the one-on-one game with Monica and Quincy, again, we were at the end of editing. We were just about done, and we did not have anything that was working. And Terry happened to have just bought the Bitter album, which had just come out, and played it in the editing room, and we were blown away by every song. And so she put Full of Me and just dropped it in. Usually when you put a song and you have to kind of cut it a little bit, right, or move it or shift, just dropped it in. And it was as if it was written for the movie. Every single moment landed perfectly. And we were literally running around the editing room, so hyped. But then it was the scary thing of we got to reach out to Michelle and see if she'll give us the rights to use it. And she did. And so grateful to both of them. It's fun though, because I do often think when songs come out now, what would I put that in? And there's one song, it came out obviously a while ago, but Madonna's What It Feels Like for a Girl. I wish that was out at that time, because I would have absolutely found a spot for that. That song speaks to the film so well and the theme so well.
Yeah. Are you a big mixtape kind of gal?
Oh, that was honestly when I was putting together the soundtrack for Love and Basketball, all the stuff, when they were in high school and college, Guy and Keith Sweat and Bobby Brown. That was me. I save everything. And I had all these mixtapes from college that you put together. And it's so funny because you're putting them together off the radio, so they have really bad edits.
Yeah, you're like, okay, it's about to play. Let me see if it's going to come on. I get you.
So to be able to just put all my favorite songs in that, it was fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. That brings back so many memories of literally like sometimes you would just kind of wait and you knew a new song was going to come out, but you didn't know what it was, but you're like, I might get the beginning and end. So let me just tape in case, like, I think my listeners will get it, but a lot of my, because I teach a lot of the students there, it's like way over their head. They don't even know what a cassette is. So, but
yeah. You have to name your mixtapes as well.
You got to name it. And then write on the cover of each thing. Yeah, absolutely. There's something about it, right? And I think that alone is something that really connects people, like these type of experiences, and thinking about it. Oh, this is my I'm sad and lonely tape. This is my hype music, and oh my gosh, absolutely. So I know we got to wrap up soon, but I always like to kind of get a little bit more from our chats and stuff, just to kind of get to know you a little. I'm curious. Before I ask that question, sorry, I did troll your social media, and recently a lot of our listeners asked, what movies she was inspired by. I'm going to tell you, she answered this question like 1,000 times on a lot of interviews. And so I'm going to divert them there. But one of the things that jumped out at me was you recently responded to a post that said, what film have you seen at least 5 times? And of course you list like a bunch of amazing films, but the one that jumped out at me that made me smile was, I want to know if you were a Turbo or Ozone fan from Breakin'.
And honestly, I debated putting that on there, but I was like, you got to speak your truth. Got to speak your truth. And I was Turbo. And have you seen the movie recently? Not recently.
It doesn't hold up, right? I knew it wouldn't. I was like, see, this is the thing about those 80s films that we love. You have this nostalgia, and then you go back and you're like, some hold up and some
that one did not. But God, back then I was obsessed.
Right? Obsessed. Well, I think it's a representation thing again, right? You're seeing it like, and they're not just thugs and all like in this negative light. There was like some positivity. It was dancing. It was fun. It was like kind of a different feel, like, and just feeling that, that hip hop culture, even though it was quite watered down hip hop culture at that point. It's not like Planet B-Boy or anything, but I'm sure it does not hold up. Maybe a remake by Gina.
I can shut that down. Not gonna happen.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, I had to bring that up because of course there's all these like, amazing films and things. And then I was like, oh my gosh, she put Breakin' on there. I have to ask her about it. Girl after my own heart. So,
right. But then who was yours between the two?
Oh yeah, I like Turbo as well. He just had more attitude, and was just like, and yeah. I mean, and I'm gonna admit it. I watched, Electric Boogaloo. I watched the second one as well.
Too. Of course, I didn't like it as much.
Nothing like the OG, right? Nothing like the original. Yeah, totally all about the Turbo. I mean, when we're talking character, we go deep into this. He had a lot more, grit. Oh gosh, this is going to be the title of this. Gina Prince-Bythewood breaking down, Breakin'. That amazing cinematic piece of the 80s. So in terms of either film or book or mixtape or music, is there something that you kind of go to as like maybe something you'd recommend to people that are like, oh, if you like this genre of blah, 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 or something you would gift someone? Is there something that's kind of your go-to with either a film or music or a book?
Wow. I would say music is Nina Simone. Mm-hmm. Anything by Nina Simone. She's so great to do anything to, but certainly to write to, because she's just so real and raw and just opens you up emotionally. Also, one of the greatest albums of all time, Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, is the absolute go-to. Love and Basketball was written to X Factor on repeat. It's one of the best songs ever.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I missed that. I wish there was that. I wish we got more. I wish we had gotten more. So I don't want to keep you too much longer. Thank you so much for joining me. I do want to hear really quickly about, or as long as you'd like, The Woman King, which is your next project, and of course, what's on the horizon for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm so excited about The Woman King, and I really feel like all my work, including Old Guard, has led me to this point where I can do this film and do it right. And just feels like our Braveheart. And the more that we have the opportunity to put us up on screen as heroes and not just an idealized version, but very complicated. That's what I want to do. And it's such an incredible historical epic about these women who were literally amazing, and we just don't know about them. And those beautiful women in Black Panther were mirrored after these real life women, and so to be able to tell their story and be able to see that women and Black women were warriors, and from even way back then, I'm excited to tell their story. And Viola Davis is starring in it and also producing, and she's everything that you hope that she would be, and I'm just excited to be able to play with her.
We are excited for it and all the projects that are to come. Again, huge fan and appreciate all of the work and all of the work to come. So thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. It's been such an honor and a privilege, and I just really enjoyed it and hope you'll come back.
I will. Thank you. Greg speaks about you, and I trust Greg, and this was fun. This was
absolutely
really fun.
Yeah. He's my pal. So it's funny, through quarantine, he made the mistake of telling me, well, let's just talk every week, not realizing how long quarantine would be. And literally we talked every week. And so it was really cool, though. I got to go along the journey with you all on the Old Guard, kind of in the background during the, the pressers and the process and just kind of all of that hype. And I'm super psyched for him as well. He just speaks so highly about what you brought to his story and the project. And so it's just an amazing thing. So of course, congrats on that. And this was a lot of fun. So thank you so much, Gina.
Absolutely. Thank you.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to Culture Chat and hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please subscribe and rate my podcast. Feel free to leave me suggestions or send an email to mimi@culturechatpodcast.com or follow me on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook.